In this video, we will start with installing Docker and Docker Compose. But before that, let's understand why we would need Docker containers. We would be deploying the applications as containers, and we would need Docker as the build package will be running containers both in dev and test environment using Chef Habitat. We would need Docker Compose to run multi-container applications when we deploy multi-tier applications using Chef Habitat. We would also use virtual machines. So let me set a comparison between virtual machine and containers so that we get a better understanding about what exactly is a container. As we all know, virtual machine has its own user space plus kernel space of an operating system. Container just has the user space of the operating system, and it utilizes the kernel space of the host operating system. Under virtual machines, server hardware is virtualized, but in case of containers, the operating system is virtualized, I would say. And in virtual machines, it would be a full-fledged operating system and applications that would be actually running. But in case of containers, it would be just a set of processes that are isolated from the rest of the system. Virtual machines image can't capture all the needs inside the image itself, due to which it becomes very cumbersome when we start using virtual machines. We need to specifically define the environment variables, the dependencies, and everything in case of virtual machine. But in case of containers, the image which we capture of a container, it provides all the necessary applications plus binaries plus configurations and dependencies in a single bundle. And it becomes really easy to build, deploy, and manage container because of this. And virtual machine size is also pretty huge because it has the full-fledged operating system when compared to the containers. So let's see a pictorial representation of virtual machines and Docker containers. In case of virtual machines, we would have the underlying infrastructure. We would be having a host operating system, and then on top of it, to virtualize the hardware, we would be having hypervisor. And each set of virtual machines would be having their own guest operating system, which would be a full-fledged operating system, and the applications, libraries, and binaries. Let's see how exactly the Docker container looks. It also would have an infrastructure, which is the physical hardware, host operating system, and on top of it, you would have any containerization environment like Docker Engine, which would help us run containers. And each container would just have a thin layer of the operating system called as the base OS, and applications and binaries, everything captured inside the single image. So you can run several containers in the same set of hardware when compared with virtual machines, because containers don't have a full-fledged operating system, so the resource utilization in case of containers is much better, and it's pretty quick because there is no OS initialization time. So Docker containers is lightweight, virtualized, portable, software-defined environment in which software can run in isolation from other softwares running on the physical host machine. The difference in operating system distribution and underlying hardware is abstracted. Docker is one of the containerization platform, and Docker is a tool which provides us an easier means to create, deploy, or run application using containers. Same way, Docker Compose is a tool which helps us set up multi-tier application architecture, and we would be using YAML file to define the application services. Like I have a front tier and the backend. I would be defining both the tier of applications in a YAML file, and with a single command, I can control the complete stack of both the containers, the front end and the backend. So let's start with installing Docker software and start the service of Docker so that we can work with containers. We can create and run and manage containers. We would also install Docker Compose so that in later set of videos, we would be able to manage multi-container applications. So we would go ahead and install Docker. We will update the operating system before we proceed with the new software installation. So we will do apt-get update, and once that's finished, let's install Docker now. apt-get install docker.io. This is the command to install Docker. Say yes. And once the Docker installation is done, we can go ahead and check the version of Docker which is installed. So this would take some time. So Docker installation is done. We can verify using docker -- version. So Docker installation is done. The service of Docker is up and running as well. And we would go ahead and install our second tool, which is the Docker Compose tool. So the command would be docker -compose with apt-get install. We will say yes. Docker Compose tool is, as mentioned, is used for multi-container application execution. And we would verify the version of Docker Compose as well using docker -compose command with -- version. So in the next video, we will go a bit more deeper to understand how is the application lifecycle managed with Chef Habitat. See you then.